to look.
Are you saying I look professional? It's my backwards cap, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what it is. How are you doing today?
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're running a little bit late.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and talk about why, because I don't know. I think it's relevant. There's something in there about the creative process and wanting to try new things, and the time for trying new things, and the time to just do things the way that you have.
Yeah.
So long story short, I watched one of my friends live stream videos yesterday, and they were sitting down. They looked very relaxed and comfortable. And maybe you watching this, you think, "Oh, they look relaxed. They look like they're comfortable." But after a while, I don't know. So this is the other thing I think I was thinking about, is that I did a podcast for a long time, and we just
You sat in stools.
Yeah, we sat.
Yeah.
Well, no, it was like these Aeron, really comfortable, like office chairs. And I remember that. I remember feeling really relaxed and just like, I don't know. So we stand for this, but I was like, I don't know, what if we sat down? How would that be? So I drug our wing chairs over here, and I like set them up over here, and I moved the camera and I moved the microphones and everything. Didn't say anything to Rachel. And then she saw what I was doing, and she was like, I don't want to sit down. And we looked at the shot, and the reality was, it's just not, we're not really set up for that. We're set up for this. This is like how I set up my lights and everything. So
Yeah.
and the time for experimenting with that stuff was not 5 minutes.
Not right now.
5 minutes before the podcast started. So that's why we're late.
Well, lesson learned, you know.
Yeah. But I think it is a worthwhile, like, because you have to. Sometimes you get these ideas, and they could turn out to be good ideas, or they could turn out to be bad ideas. But it's hard to rule something out unless you try it out. Yeah. So
it's true.
So I think we'll just go ahead and jump into it.
Yeah, since we're a little late.
Yeah. So here we go. Welcome to In the Boat with Ben and Rachel. I'm Ben.
And I'm Rachel.
And this podcast exists to encourage and motivate our fellow creators. We speak from our own personal experiences as creators who work full-time from home, have 6 children, and we're just trying to balance pursuing our passion and raising our family. And so we hope that our perspective is something that you can maybe find yourself in, feel some encouragement, and ultimately get unstuck doing the things that you love. Today, we're talking about social media. And we're talking about it from the perspective of when it comes to being a creator, when it comes to your daily or weekly rhythm, is it a bad thing? And I think you probably know, if you've listened to us before, you probably know we're going to try to bring some nuance to that question. There's, it's not going to be like a black or white answer. It's just going to be more situational and stuff like that. But I think there is also, like, there's some objective data out there about the effects of social media on just our overall mood, our productivity, our creativity. And I think it's important to acknowledge those things and be aware of them. So
Yeah.
we're also coming at it from kind of two, as is often the case, kind of two different sides. Rachel is
Hmm.
more of a
I don't
Luddite.
do it at all.
Is Luddite the word? Have you?
I don't know what that is.
I think so. A Luddite is someone who is kind of anti technology or resistant to new technologies.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm anti. I
Mhm.
think it's just a personal preference
Yeah.
for me. Like
Yeah.
I'm not on a, on a mission to get everybody off of social media or something. I just
Yeah.
don't enjoy doing it myself. So,
Yeah. That's not a good word.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll go with what you said. And then I'm much more like when there's a new social media app like
You're-
brand new, I'll go download it, and cuz I got to reserve my username so
just
that
in case.
yeah, so that the other Ben Tolson out there doesn't,
There
snatch
is
it
another
up.
Ben Tolson too.
There
There's also
there is.
another Rachel Tolson.
Yeah. So I got to be first.
Yeah.
And I like to try it out. I was a little bit slow on adopting TikTok. That was one of them. This was probably the first time where there was a social media app that I was like, I don't get it, you
Mm-hmm.
know? What
Yeah.
are and and I genuinely had that feeling of like the kids seem
Yeah.
to understand how this works, but like I was looking at it and I was like, I don't understand. It took me a while before I started to, and this is kind of how it works for most new social media platforms. Is there are those people who are early adopters. They get it right away, and they start making moves on it, um, and then it becomes more widespread, more commercial, and that's when it starts to like how the nature of it really starts to settle in.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. But there was definitely a time I didn't understand. But for the most part, like I'm usually eager to figure out new things. Um, and when it comes to creativity, sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
So I think we need to talk about first some of the major players, because that's really when you think about social media, like I'm thinking about Facebook and Twitter, Instagram,
Yeah.
and YouTube is kind of a social media platform in a
Yeah.
way. But really those three, the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram platforms are the most in terms of usage.
Mm-hmm.
I think for most people, those are those are the ones where people spend a majority of their time.
Yeah.
And TikTok is coming up, I think,
I think with the younger
especially with the
generation.
younger
Yeah.
folks. Yeah. So, and we could get into like the differences of how people engage with those platforms and stuff. But I think if I were to generalize the different ways that I engage and try to sum it up as like, all of these, this applies to all of these platforms. It's either I'm looking for something interesting because I'm bored, or I'm looking for something to distract me.
Hmm.
Um, so it's kind of novelty seeking, or I'm genuinely wanting to consume, like I'm wanting to consume something from somebody I follow whose work I enjoy, or I am participating in, like communicating with people and networking and that kind of thing. Posting content. I think those are probably the three main categories.
Yeah.
So in the first one, that comes in the form of it kind of that big question mark of like, what's on here that I've never seen before? And I think there is something fun about that. Like there's kind of the discovery. Um, I've found a lot of new creators that way whose work inspires me. But there's also um, the kind of looking for trending topics and news, um, being feeling more connected to what's going on in the world and the conversation happening around that. Um, and then what was the second thing I mentioned? Oh, so there are creators I follow who I'm always like I'm looking forward to seeing what they are sharing. Um, and then the third one, I feel like I'm just summing this up, but when you think about the way you use social media, like, and I'm not saying how you mostly use it, but like the reasons you might use social media,
Yeah.
do you feel like they fall into one of those three categories?
I mean, yeah, I don't ever go on any of those places because I'm bored. Like I never scroll. I don't usually. The second reason, like learning about new things from other people. I feel like maybe it's because I have a writing community and we're always like engaging with each other every day in places that aren't social media. Like, we have a Zoom meeting every morning and we email each other and that kind of stuff. So I don't need to go there to learn about new things or even get news content because I usually get news out of, the news app or the newspaper. I don't actually trust social media for news stuff because there's a lot of misinformation and stuff. And as a former journalist, I'm like, I don't use social media for news.
Yeah.
So I guess, I mean, the only thing I really use social media for is if I have something new that I am posting, which is kind of ironic because if I'm not, engaging with it to see what new stuff other people have, then, why would people engage with it to see what new stuff I have? But I was going to say, like, the things that, like, for the people who aren't in my community, the ways that I learn about new stuff is like through their newsletters, So
Yeah.
I mean, I have a totally different approach to social media just because just for my own health and wellness and mental stability and, like my own creativity, really, I don't go to any of those places.
Yeah.
So
So
if Facebook hears this and like they start burying my posts way far down, that's probably why.
well, they're already, I mean, they're already
I know.
burying your stuff.
Yeah.
So I can't cite specific research. I know it's out there, but there's a lot of research around um, individual well-being and social media usage, and it just in general, most people feel happier when they take a break from social media.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, there are several people who I either follow or I'm friends with who will do like a 30-day break or a 90-day break or something like that. And they always come back talking about how like almost instantly they started feeling happier, less anxious about stuff. And so it stands to reason that when it comes to your creativity, your mental and emotional state plays a big
It's
role
very
in
important, especially when, like, as a writer, because in the writing world, you're going on those ups and downs all the time anyway, because of the nature of the career. And then just seeing that, like, I mean, there was a time that I engaged with stuff more, and the vitriol and the the ways that people can excuse themselves from being cruel and unkind it's just really hard for me to see. And so I had to like remove myself from all of those places because those things started, it started bringing me down. And you can't be creative when you feel so heavy all the time because of the things that you're seeing on, social media. I mean, and I guess that goes for the news too, because I don't want to see what other people think of the news. I want to read the news and make the opinion come up with my own opinion, not like be influenced by all of the, it's just, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just a different way of engaging, I guess, that I had to realize. I mean, this was it like 2 years ago that I kind of took myself completely away? It's been like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, like whenever I feel like I have to get on there to post about something new, I always feel worse. Like just because you can't get on there without seeing some things,
Mm-hmm.
like even if you're not scrolling or whatever. So it's social media is very hard for me, but
Yeah. And so in that first category, what it sounds like is it's not a thing you do. I really just, it's a habit for me. It's this habit of, I mean, sometimes when I first wake up, if I have any downtime, like I'm waiting for the water to boil for my coffee, or if I'm waiting for something to render, like it's like, oh, I've got a little space here. I'm going to fill it with just scrolling through social media, and who knows what I'll find.
I just feel anxious hearing that.
So there's actually a mechanism that's like it's the dopamine response in the brain. There's a mechanism that is driving that behavior.
It's like an addiction almost.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
I just haven't put in the work to build better habits.
Mm-hmm.
But what that does to me creatively is it gives me a place to go when I feel stuck. It gives me a place to go when I feel, and let me I'll clarify how I'm putting this because I think it's important. It gives me a place to go when I'm feeling stuck. It gives me a place to go when I feel like the work that I'm doing is tedious.
Mm-hmm.
It gives me a place to go when I feel bored, and it gives me a place to go when I feel anxious or uncertain about the work that I'm doing. And then in some cases, when I'm stressed out. And it does provide some kind of escape, some level of comfort. But it doesn't solve the problems, the root problems. It solves my discomfort, but it doesn't actually solve that feeling of being stuck. It doesn't solve the feeling that something I'm doing is tedious. Like it always, if I come back to my creative work, I'm basically where I left off, except I feel a little bit worse,
Yeah.
So it's not, so I'm not, I would never prescribe like use social media as a way to take a break from your creative work. I think in the second category, when you follow other creators and their work inspires you,
Yeah. I think that
you
can
have
be
to
healthy.
You have to be careful with that too, because you can get caught in the comparison loop and stuff like
Well,
that.
and I was going to say a lot of writer friends too have said the same thing, when you're not selling books and you see other people constantly like with news about books that they've sold, and it's not that you're not happy, but you're like, why is this not happening to me,
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very difficult thing for creators, I think.
Yeah.
So but yeah, sorry, did I steal your thought?
No, I was just thinking about how like maybe it is healthier to consume social media in those moments that I was describing, maybe it's healthier to consume social media than to like, you know, go eat a pint of ice cream or something like that.
Oh
But then
gosh.
I was kind of laughing to myself because a lot of those habits go hand in hand. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go to the kitchen. I don't know what I'm gonna eat, but I'm gonna find something to snack on to make me feel better. And while
While
I'm
I scroll.
yeah,
Yeah.
while I'm snacking, I'm gonna look
Yeah.
through social media, and that'll make me feel a little bit worse, and I'll just eat a little bit more, and you know, uh, yeah, it's not it's not all bad though.
Yeah, I don't think social media is evil in and of itself. I think it really depends on the person and what you're able to handle. And I think it's a great place to share creative work, or it can be, you know. But I remember a time when I would share poetry, and um you know, the people who disagreed with the poems that I had were not very nice, you know? And it
Mm-hmm.
just like, I don't know, you those aren't my readers and I don't want them there. And so I think I had to come to a point where for me, I had to say not everybody gets access to my life. And it
Yeah,
feels like on social media that's what it's all about, is everybody has access to your life, you know? And so I had to pull away from that. And it could be just a personality thing, you know. I'm definitely the introvert in our relationship, and I don't enjoy engaging with hundreds of and thousands of people, and especially over the, you know, over the computer and internet, where I
so
feel like it has this level of distance, you know, that allows people to feel better about not using their words quite as carefully as they could.
yeah, so talking about that, I feel like we're really getting into that third way where it's you're engaging with social media, and that happens in a couple of ways. You're either posting and sharing something, whether that's your work or your thoughts or whatever, and um, and also participating in the conversation, so commenting and that kind of thing. And because it's a public forum that everybody has access to, and because of that separation between yourself and the other person, and not having to really, it makes it a lot easier just to not think about that other person as a whole person, as a whole
Mm-hmm.
human being.
Yeah.
And so there is this kind of dehumanizing effect, and and if you are the recipient of dehumanizing comments, that can be really soul crushing, especially if it's coming, if those comments are coming into work that you've shared, you know, things that
Mm-hmm.
you've poured yourself into. And what's kind of frustrating is, well, and it's not, I think there's really no getting around this. If you want to grow an audience,
Yeah.
you have to you get that audience through networking and through engaging in the public forum, wherever that public forum happens to be. And I think what you would really love to have is like an online community
Mm-hmm.
where only people um, who've kind of made it through your vetting process, whatever that is. For some people, it's like, well, you have to pay $5 a month. You know, a troll is not going to pay $5 a month so they
I don't
can
know.
leave a
Some
hateful
might.
comment. Yeah, I mean,
You
some.
never know.
But then you also, in the community, you can have moderation, you can have your own rules, you own and get to define how that space works for you and for the other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that that kind of experience would be wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to get that, you have to go through all of this junk, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I I had this really bad habit when I started sharing. I was at the time, I think I was doing more hand lettering designs and sharing that kind of thing. And honestly, before then, I don't think I really did much on social media. I didn't think of myself as a content creator. You know, I wasn't engaged in the same way that I am now. And all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, this is really cool. Like I can share something and anybody could see it."
Mm-hmm.
But what came with that for me was this kind of obsessive um like just
Oh, chasing approval,
yeah, and
chasing
like
hearts, and
looking at, well, how many likes did this one get?
Mm-hmm.
And did anybody comment on it? And it was it was never enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so and it was really interesting to me how quickly I fell right into that. And I'd like to say that nowadays I'm a little bit better, and I think part of it is that I've published so much stuff
Yeah.
that I just can't be precious about like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
how well. So, you know, we'll have a live stream that'll get like 10 views when we normally get 30. And it doesn't bother me anymore. And
Yeah.
I also don't think of that as like, oh, maybe that topic wasn't as interesting, because part of it is I also understand that there's an algorithm in play, and maybe there was, you know, I didn't title it a certain way, or it just didn't hit at the right time, or, you know, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Um, I I fall a lot more as far as content is concerned, and how I feel about um, what I'm producing. I fall a lot more on like, well, how consistent am I, and am I improving the quality? Do I like it?
Right.
And letting that guide how I feel about the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard when you're, especially when you're first starting out. I think it's really difficult not to let that feedback
Mm-hmm.
mean something to you and say something to you about the quality of your work.
Yeah. Well, and as creative people, it's hard to separate. I was just reading in a magazine the other day, what writers are told all the time is like, you know, we get so many rejections, and they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting the work. So you should separate yourself from the work. And I'm like, that's all well and good, but when you're a creative person, it feels like that's a part of you. Like it feels like I have birthed something into the world, and it's as important to me as, you know, maybe not as important as my children, but you know what I mean? Like it is a part, it contains parts of you,
Mm-hmm.
every single thing. And so it's really hard to separate yourself from what you create.
There's a creator I follow on Twitter. His name is Jay Klaus, and uh, he does a lot of really interesting things. But one of the things he does is he runs a hashtag tweet 100 club kind of thing. You can join for free. There's also like a paid version that comes with a community, and like you can have a little bit more direction and stuff like that. But the whole point is um, to it's a daily for 100 days Twitter thing. And what I really like about it is it puts the emphasis not on like what the results are of doing that, but it's just
What is it? You're just posting for 100 days?
yeah, posting
Oh, okay.
at least once a day for 100 days.
Okay.
And you you know, like success is I did this for 100 days. And there's a principle called um, leading and lagging metrics. I think that's what it is. So leading metrics are things that are more immediate. So like you tweet something and somebody likes it or retweets it or comments on it,
Mm-hmm.
And that can feel really significant. That can feel like, oh, this, you know, this means something. But the lagging, I think it's measures, not metrics. The lagging measure is something that happens as a result of consistent activity over time.
Yeah. Which is harder to measure.
Well, and it's, yeah, it's harder to see. In the live stream I was watching yesterday, they were talking about, and this is kind of notorious for YouTube. They were talking about how like they had posted 50 videos on their channel, and that got them to like 26 subscribers or something like
Yeah.
that. And if you told somebody like, okay, if you post 50 videos, you might get 25 subscribers or so.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be like, well, no, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
That doesn't seem like it's worth it. But then what happens is you post 50 more videos and you get to like 200. And then you post another 50 after that, and that gets you to 2,000.
Yeah.
And then another, you know, so, and that's, you know, that's not how it works for everybody. But, you know, in that, like 50 videos is, if you're posting weekly, that's a year's worth of content.
Yeah.
And that feels like a long time for such a small result. So it's kind of a challenge, I think, a huge challenge as creators. Social media is really good at giving us leading measures and celebrating those things. Like YouTube has your subscriber count is like, when you go to your YouTube dashboard, that's probably the most prominent thing you see.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a leading measure of your work. When you've published your 100th video on YouTube, like they don't send you an email or a message or anything saying congratulations, you know, because they're all about that short feedback loop.
Yeah.
So I think the point of that whole like kind of tangent of the conversation is that social media, it really is a great place to discover your audience and for your audience to discover you. And at the same time, like you really have to be careful to avoid the trap of thinking about your success in the terms that they set for social media, because it's not really set up to give you long-term feedback.
Yeah. Well, and I think also I think what it boils down to is we kind of have to decide for ourselves what will work. And it may not be all the things, it may not be any of the things, but I think we have to have permission. You know, I mean, I struggled with it for a while because a lot of publishers now expect you to have a presence on social media, because especially during the pandemic, there were no in-person events, and like you needed a place to share things. But I think more and more people are starting to realize, you know what, some people just aren't cut out, you know, for those things, because maybe they feel more deeply like I do, or maybe they just don't have the capacity to engage with a large audience over the internet, you know. I'm still trying to figure it out too. Like, how do you grow an audience without social media? But I just want people to know that there is permission to like not be on the things, you know?
Yeah. And maybe, so another thing that social media does, especially if you're following really successful, well-established creators, it can feel like, oh, they've always been everywhere all the time. Like they've always been on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, and like you feel like you're seeing their stuff pop up constantly. But the reality is many of them started with one or two that they really focused on,
Mm-hmm.
and then they were able to translate their success in one platform to others once they were established there. And so there's nothing wrong with, just if you want to grow on social media, but you feel like Facebook is toxic.
Mm-hmm.
It is toxic.
Mm-hmm.
But you feel like if I post my work here, like I'm not gonna like the conversation around it. It's like I'm always gonna feel like I dread it. Well, is there a place where if you posted your work, you wouldn't feel that way? Where you would actually feel excited about it. YouTube is one of those places for me. I have the most followers on Twitter, but I enjoy posting. Did I say Facebook or did I say YouTube?
You said YouTube.
Okay, sorry. I don't know. Like I got confused for a second.
Like as your favorite.
Yeah.
Like that's your, yeah.
But I enjoy posting on YouTube the most.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's, I mean, really, out of all of my channels, it's got the lowest number of followers.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoy the conversations I have. I enjoy the comments that I get. I enjoy the medium. And I also like that it takes a little bit more work to publish something. Like I can't just be like, oh, I'm going to post a thing. And, like I have to follow a process to put something out. So for those reasons, I would be perfectly happy with just focusing on YouTube.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's something you have to give yourself permission to do also is to say, if I do want to use social media as a way to grow an audience, it's okay for me just to pick the one that I'm most interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has its benefits too, because that focus on one will help you, I think, in a shorter amount of time, be a little bit more successful because you're not trying to spread yourself out over.
Well, and I had a thought, we didn't even get into this, but as far as time management is concerned, I wonder sometimes, so it's not just like the mental and emotional toll that social media takes on me. It's also just knowing that it's such a time warp kind of thing. And I don't have a lot of time anyway. So if I'm going to be using my time, I want to be creating during that time. I don't want to be engaging in conversations on social media, you know? So I think maybe that's probably where you and I are different too, is you enjoy having conversations in those places. But for me, it almost feels like pressure. Like if I post something and somebody comments or has wants to engage in a conversation, I feel like I have to. And I don't like feeling obligated to, to sacrifice my creative time for engaging in conversations, if that makes any sense. I know that it doesn't have to happen, right then and there, but I think in my mind it's like, oh, this person, I don't know.
Can I offer maybe a potential solution?
I mean, I'm not going to use it anyway, but
that's fine. I'm saying this for myself too, because this is how I would like to handle. It's a little bit different on Twitter, like, or Facebook, where it's a little bit more immediate. But I've even found lately on Facebook, I'll post something and I won't even like or, react in any way. I won't comment. I'll be like, I'm just putting this thing out there. And the downside of that is that when you don't engage with comments on any platform, that affects how you perform overall on that platform. And so I think there's some value to being engaged. But so here's kind of my working solution is if that's something that you think would be worthwhile, actually schedule maybe an hour a week or 30 minutes a week.
Yeah, and I used to do that.
And
that's the only time you get on. And yeah.
Right. And look through the comments, and then instead of actually responding to every single one, maybe think of it as an opportunity to like, okay, this could be a way for me to come up with new content. And that would be like, the question I would ask is, what piece of content could I make as a response to a comment or a question or something like that?
Too.
And then, put that in your thing, and eventually, like, you could even reply to that and be like, that's a great question. I think I'll make a video about that. So stay tuned. And then it's like, okay, they've at least seen that you saw their question, and now they're like, oh, well, I guess I need to keep, watching or stay tuned in so I don't miss it.
Yeah.
So I think that could be a workable solution.
Yeah.
But this, the scheduling part is really the biggest piece of it, because it's like, I think a lot of times the approach is, oh, if somebody comments, like, I need to, and I have a bad habit of just like checking back every, 10 or 15 minutes. Like, did somebody leave a comment? So it would be much better for me mentally, creatively, if I set aside some time. I could do it every day, like 15 minutes a day.
You've tried that before, though.
Would be better than,
doesn't work for you.
I think what you mean is I've had that idea, but I haven't actually tried it. So, all right. I don't think we do need to wrap it up. We didn't really get into kind of that second mode, which is creators you follow. And I think I just wanted to touch on one thing you said, because you talked about your writer group and how you discover new things a lot of times through them. And I think when it comes to that kind of engagement with social media, where you're consuming somebody else's content, where you find new content to consume matters a lot. When like social media platforms just by themselves are basically uncurated. They have algorithms to try to like feed you stuff that you'd be interested in, but they don't work in your favor.
Yeah.
For your mental health, for your emotional health, for your creativity. And so even just a little bit of effort on your part to curate what you're seeing, or like you're doing, think that's not my source for those things, and find other places. So like newsletters are a great source. You have Austin Kleon's newsletter. He always shares a bunch of awesome, interesting stuff. So anyways, I wanted to touch on that. If you don't have the time to curate, social media is like, I don't know, it's just kind of like you could, I'm trying to think of a good metaphor.
The Wild West.
So when I was growing up, they had in California, they had these flea markets. And
they have everything. Yeah.
There's all kinds of just, you could find something really useful and valuable, or, like these cheap wooden marionette puppets. Like, what, you don't need it, but it's there, and you might actually buy one
because it's cheap.
Yeah. And it's like,
sale.
And then later on you're like, why did I do that? That's kind of what social media is like. It's like going to the flea market. Except
flea markets stress me out.
Yeah.
It's too much visually. That's probably a lot of it too, is there's just too much visually, there's too much noise, there's too much,
Yeah.
I have problems with all of those things. So
All right. I think we'll leave it there. Social media is a flea market. All right. Well, I hope this was helpful in some way. I don't know. It's kind of challenging me to go back to some of those ideas that I've had about how I'd rather be using social media in those three different ways. And yeah, so I hopefully this gave you some ideas or validated your thoughts, or maybe you disagree with us. Either way, I'd
just
love
be
to.
nice about it if you disagree.
No, it's fine. Like, you know,
No, like I am
Be-
fine with disagreement. Just be nice.
yeah.
Be kind.
Leave a comment if you're listening to this in the live stream. Love to hear your thoughts. Or if you are listening to this on your favorite podcast app and you were like, this was such a great episode, everybody should listen to this podcast, leave us a review. Those reviews help us rank a little bit better in the podcast rankings and help people find this podcast. Share it with a friend. That would be awesome. And if you want to find us online, you can go to intheboatpodcast.com. And if you want to find me online, you can go to bentolson.com. Rachel, where can they find you?
I am at racheltolson.com.
All
And
right.
I am on social media at Rachel Tolson in basically all the places.
Yeah.
You won't engage much with me. But you can see new things every now and then.
Yeah.
So
I think it's good. We'll get into it a little bit in the after show, but we're going to sign off for now. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. All right, after show time. What I didn't get into was that I think I think there's a way to grow an audience by posting on social media without exposing yourself to all of the hatefulness and the grossness. And
yeah.
I think part of it is, and not like turning off the comments, but it's kind of like, I'm going to show up, I'm going to share something, and then I'm going to leave. And then maybe you have some time set aside and you skim through the comments, and if anything like stands out to you, it's worth your time. Anything stands out to you as like, oh, this is something that would be worth responding to in some way.
Yeah.
I don't think from the platform's perspective, I don't think it takes much of you responding to comments or reacting to people's comments in order to give you kind of that boost
visibility.
Yeah. I don't think it's one of those things where it's like, oh, if you don't reply to every single thing, we're going to bury your post the next time. And over time, as that audience grows, even while that audience is growing, you have a place. I think for you right now, that place is your newsletter.
Yeah.
Where you're totally in control of how those interactions happen. And that is, I think that feels better as like, oh, I feel like I can come on here and I can share things and I can be engaged without always having like feeling uncomfortable or feeling afraid that somebody's going to say something, you know. Yeah, we'll have to talk about haters and trolls sometime too, because I think that's a big problem, and it's not as simple as like just ignore the trolls, you know.
Yeah, no, it's not.
But
especially for women.
Right. Yeah.
And minorities.
All right. Well, we've run a little bit late,
Yeah.
but
I need to get going.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.